Hello, welcome to the program Political Viewpoint on ASO Television. My name is Topsy Gimba, your host. Political Viewpoint comes to you 3 times in a week. We started on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at about this time, where we look into national issues and discuss them. The program gives me the opportunity to invite personalities to be with us on any edition I intend to handle, just like this one you are about to watch wherever you might be in this country. Of course, you know, Nigeria is growing with population, and food shortages are becoming eminent in the country. And many sources are being profiled on how best such problem can be handled. And of recent, you'll be hearing about genetically modified organisms. By that we mean they will now take the natural crop we have and modify it so that it will produce more yields. For either one person, it will now make for about 2 to 3 or 4 for them to eat. But again, scientists are of the opinion that as much as certain chemicals are introduced to that particular crop, the tendency here is likely going to be harmful to human consumption. And there are people who will be out to provide information to Nigerians that indeed many countries who have found themselves practicing this scientific way of multiplying crops to meet the growing population is becoming so dangerous. And they have been campaigning across the country, and that's why I decided to go out to look at a professor who has been out for this matter, telling Nigeria, conscientizing, creating awareness that genetically modified organisms are not safe for human consumption. With me in the studio is a renowned professor, Professor Christoph Beck Amua. He is the Executive Director, Center for Food Safety and Agricultural Research, simply put in this acronym as CEFSA. It's a pleasure having you on the program this evening, my area Professor Christoph Beck.
Thank you, my dear host, Gimba, and thank you, dear participant that is watching us across the other side of the screen.
Yes. You will listen to my preamble.
Yeah.
You'll be one of these persons I know. I came to know you when I had the opportunity of meeting with Mr. Shegun Adebayo, where he organized a mini press call for journalists telling us the inherent dangers associated to genetically modified organisms, where we today have in this country being prepared or these people who are actually advocating for that to have in the country. And then you came up to now saying no, it has this side effect on us. So there is a need for you to tell us basically what the country is about to face if truly it has side effect for human consumption, those genetically modified crops.
Thank you once again, my dear host. Genetically modified organisms in agriculture are promoted as a spin-off of agricultural biotechnology. And it's important for us at the Center for Food Safety and Agricultural Research, where I am leading as the Executive Director, to let Nigerians who are going to be consuming these organisms know what really they are being put up against. These organisms are being promoted, unfortunately, by people and officers of the government of Nigeria who are supposed to be gatekeepers, who are supposed to be the ones holding the doors to control, evaluate the safety and the protection industries for the Nigerian population to control, but they end up being the ones promoting these things. And these things are private businesses. Now, the introduction and promotion of genetically modified organisms as spin-offs of agricultural biotechnology into the Nigerian population is hinged on fake and false narratives. The number one false narrative is that we don't have enough food in this country. We cannot produce enough food. And it is alluded as though the traditional heirloom seeds, crops that we have, that incidentally have fed this population from post-independence, from pre-independence, up to this point that our population has never had a negative growth.
Okay.
Now they are telling us that we cannot feed ourselves. Let's take for a minute that it is true that we have food issues. But what are the indices? What are the causes? Because I know, because in many parts of this country, we are still battling with post-harvest losses. That means we are producing enough food that is wasting, post-harvest wastages. And that is one of the parameters to look at in measuring the cause of food scarcity. But on the other side of the divide, you would see that if you get to many of the rural and even suburban markets in this country, there is no single market day that you get there that you find out that there is no food to buy. The actual narrative that we have seen from our research processes is that many people, especially with the deletion or the depletion, to rightly put it, of the middle class, many people have lost the capacity to buy food because inflation has taken over. Food inflation has gone up, not because there is no much food producing, but macroeconomic policy maneuvers have taken the means of sustenance away from many Nigerians. And that's the reason there is hunger. In a way, Nigerians don't have the means to procure food. Coming back to genetically modified organisms, this is the narrative. These are artificial foods, to put it in very basic parlance for the ordinary person to understand. These are not natural foods. These are foods, for example, if you take maize, the Taylor maize that was recently launched in January in this country, it's taken into the laboratory and the genetic makeup, the signature that God put it there naturally to make it maize, such that maize is maize. This maize is not beans. This maize is not guinea corn. This maize is not soya beans. It's maize.
It's not yam.
It's not yam. That genetic signature has been tampered with it, manipulated using chemicals and physical methods. Chemical and physical methods combine together into a process of biotechnology that produces a genetically modified organism. Now, what that implies is that there are implications. And we're not just postulating. There are implications that have been monitored, scientifically proven in other countries where these attempts have been done, where these foods have been introduced in their food systems. And many of such countries have had negative impact, and some of them are backtracking right now as we speak.
Such country like
Germany. You cannot just bring GMOs into Germany. Like Russia. As a matter of fact, Russia, with more advanced technology than us, have said that GMOs are unsafe for human consumption, to the extent that
in Africa.
What
about countries in Africa?
In Africa, Zambia has banned it. Tanzania has banned it. Benin Republic, our neighbors here, have banned it. The reason is this: because there is no sufficient scientific experimentation long term to confirm that these things are safe. The short to medium term experiments that we have recorded in the annals of scientific reports in the journals have proven negative results, like the increase in the incidences of different kinds of cancers, like the increase in the consumption and utilization of toxic agrochemicals, chemicals that are used in agriculture. For example, I give you an instance. When this company that pioneered, initiated, established the process, the business of producing genetically modified organisms, before they started this, they were in the business of selling chemicals, weed control chemicals, in agriculture. And these chemicals, especially their flagship product, which was glyphosate, which is still glyphosate.
What's the name of the company, sir?
Monsanto.
Okay, Monsanto.
Monsanto in the US. The company has been bought over by Bayer Crop Science.
Okay.
And this company produced this chemical for killing weeds to make farming easier, quote and unquote, easier for farmers. But this
will not kill weeds.
And also kill
you have a clear farmland. You just go and cultivate.
But when they introduced this chemical in 1974, shortly afterwards, because the chemical was patronized heavily by farmers, and mostly from the developing countries, the developing world, suddenly farmers realized side effects in the crops that they were trying to protect from weeds. The chemical glyphosate was also adversely affecting the crops. So Monsanto went back to the laboratory to re-engineer the crops of target, of interest, chiefly amongst which was soybeans, to the extent that today, 98 or 92 to 98% of all the soybeans in America is genetically modified. So what they did was they engineered the crops and added some other attributes, like pest resistance, like higher yield. Of course, you know in agronomy that if weeds compete with crops, they will compete for the nutrients that will make the crops do well.
Yeah.
So if you take away the weeds, naturally
you liberate the crop.
In the traditional farming systems that we grew up to know, you know that our forefathers used to remove weeds mechanically.
Exactly.
And the crops will do well.
Exactly.
So they leverage on this to now tell the people that, oh, it is the genetically modified crop. It is genetically modified to give you higher yield. Of course, you should expect some semblance, some increase in yield, but at what cost? And this is the cost. Now, farmers have crops, seeds that will no longer be impacted negatively by the agrochemical, the pesticide, the herbicide. And therefore, they can apply herbicide freely, which is what has become the case even in Nigeria. If you go to most farming communities in Nigeria today, you will see, in fact, go to any of the suburbs in Abuja here, you will see where they farm, you will see, go to the market, you will see a lot of merchants of herbicides. Different kinds of herbicides with different percentages of concentration, some of them much beyond the internationally agreed safe limits. Now, what happens is, farmers are now at liberty to use herbicides, and as they are using these herbicides, many things are happening. Number one, as you spray the herbicides, over time, the weeds will develop resistance. And as the weeds develop resistance, there is need to apply higher concentration of those herbicides. There is also need to combine those herbicides with other surfactants to make those herbicides, the active ingredient, more active. Like glyphosate in Roundup, the market name of this chemical is Roundup. Glyphosate is the active ingredient, but in this Roundup, there are other adjuvants.
To attack the stubborn ones.
Yes, to attack the stubborn weeds. To make the active ingredient more active, more efficacious.
So it will eradicate it, yes.
So it will eradicate this. In addition to that, there are other weed killers that are even more toxic that have also been added into the combination to produce the market, the mixture or the combo in that bottle that the farmer will buy. The farmer is not a chemist. The farmer is not a scientist like I am. He wouldn't know.
Sure.
And by the way, the farmer is promised a bountiful harvest, that all the weeds will clear. So they come in different names, very attractive names like wildfire or bushfire. And as the farmer sprays it, the weeds disappears. In fact, it burns like a fire on it. Another thing that happens is this. More weeds are removed because of more chemicals in the environment, on the crop fields. When rain falls, many things happen as a result of wash off. Some of those herbicides are washed off into the environment, into the soil, and some of them run off into surface waters and into the dams, into the rivers, affecting aquatic system, organisms, and even humans that end up drinking this water. Another thing that happens is that because of the high concentration of these chemicals on the crop, there are residues, such that ordinarily you eat the crop, you are also eating the chemicals. And that is what has been found in research, that in areas or in countries or in communities where genetically modified organisms have been promoted, what happened is that research have found, investigations of the urine of people that consume foods from such fields have been found to contain the residues of those chemicals. And you know that anything that comes out of your urine means it has been processed around your entire human body.
Honestly.
It has passed through your liver, which is the main detoxifying organ. It has passed through your kidney before it gets to your bladder to be excreted as urine. That means it has entered through your blood. So these are the things that we are combating. And then, fundamentally, the process of genetic engineering, like the first crop they engineered was BT corn or BT soil. They extracted a toxin from the soil known as, it is actually a bacteria. They extracted it, it is known as Bacillus thuringiensis. They extracted it and incorporated it into the crop, such that pests, that all those aphids, I mean all those things that eat beans or stuff like that, they won't eat them. And what
the armyworms.
What that implies is that when the pests try to eat those crops, they will die, because that toxin
It's in that crop.
It's in that crop. It busts their stomachs open. Now, that is what humans are eating. When pests cannot eat it, that is what humans are eating. Again, in the process of genetic modification, genes are tampered. In some instances, certain problematic genes, quote and unquote, are cut off, and some desirable genes are inserted in the DNA. And that means, for example, a gene can be that's what they call transgenic crops. A gene can be transferred from an animal, like it is done from bacteria into crops. Unlike the normal hybrid process that happens in the natural, where sexually crops meet, male and female crops meet, and the petals and the flowers, the pollen.
Yeah, they call cross-pollination.
Cross-pollination. They pollinate and they produce hybrids. So in plant breeding, natural organic plant breeding, breeders systematically match crops like that to produce desirable traits. But in this case of biotechnology, genetic modification, a gene can be taken from a sheep or from a snake and put in a tomato to give it a desirable trait. And now what that implies is this. In biology, in life sciences, genes don't operate in isolation. The genes that make up the human person, the human genome, or a particular genome of a particular crop, they don't operate in isolation. So there are tendencies, there is uncertainty that when you extract some genes, when you remove some and you insert some, there may be consequences down the line. And some of these consequences, because you know in genetics, there are recessive genes and there are dominant genes. So what happens is that some of the consequences may not be in the short term. Some of the consequences may not appear in the next 2 years. Some of the consequences, like you see, when we procreate, when we give birth to children, sometimes we observe, people observe that our children resemble some grandparents that we don't even obviously resemble. Because there were some genes that were recessive in us from those parents that have expressed dominantly in those children. So we are saying that just like we are adding our voice from Center for Food Safety and Agricultural Research, we are adding our voice that the messenger RNA process technology that they use to manipulate the genetics of those crops that they are promoting to Africans, and particularly Nigeria, because Nigeria is the most populous African country. That technology has embedded in it uncertainties that need to be studied. And that will require time. And the scientific process requires that you test this thing, experiment it with laboratory animals for a period of time. It's called long-term studies before you push it out. So it borders on consumer protection. So for us at Center for Food Safety and Agricultural Research, we are answering a patriotic call. We are calling on the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the leadership of Nigeria to look at this critically. Because there is a lie embedded in the narrative that the silver bullet to solve Nigeria's hunger issues is GMO. There are many other actions and factors that will also x-ray, like economic. It's like you are depending on me to always give you the seed that you will plant. And I'm coming from Benue, you are coming from Abuja, or wherever you're coming from. So every season, you have to come to me to buy seed. And the day you go there and I have changed my address, I'm no longer there. I'm just giving a very simple.
I understand.
The day you come there and I have changed my address, you don't find me, you go hungry. That means the very narrative of GMOs being the silver bullet to end all of Nigeria's hunger issues will be exacerbated, will be amplified, because the seed supplier has changed address. And there could be many other factors. For example, in times of war, nobody can tell. Tomorrow, Nigeria is at war or at disagreement internationally with another country that is supplying those seeds. And they say, well, according to our foreign policy, we don't trade with a hostile nation. Then you go cap in hand begging. Thirdly, there is something we call capital flight. In experiences in countries like India, who introduced GMOs, and they paid dearly for it, they realized that over time, India had that experience, Argentina had that experience, Mexico has that experience. As I'm speaking to you, Mexico has banned GM maize. That variant that was introduced in Mexico and in other Southern American countries and even some African countries, it was tested. It has generated more problems for them. Mexico has banned it. It is that variant, the same process that they improved and kept tinkering with until they brought up this one that they call telomerase that was introduced in Nigeria. Now, the idea and the experience has been this. Over a few years of application of GMOs, countries that introduced it found out that the prices of seeds was unilaterally controlled by the seed producers. And sometimes, like in the case of India, cutting farmers, because BT cutting them, we would have been driven into the agenda that they want us to be driven into, which is population reduction. Because these crops, we have research, evidence in research that has proven that consumption of these crops fed to rats, laboratory rats, for just a period of 2.5 years. From 18 months to 2.5 years, they perish. Some of them develop different kinds of tumors, cancerous tumors. Some of the younger ones couldn't grow, they became stunted. Some of them, in fact, all of them lived shorter lifespan. So there are sundry issues, and it is imperative that as a country, we must ask questions. We shouldn't just jump. If smaller countries in Africa that are judged to be poorer than Nigeria are taking a more critical look at this before approval, Nigeria desires to do much more because we have a larger population. That means if anything happens to this population, it will be genocidal of gargantuan proportion. And no responsible government should be fooled by agents of government who have transformed into promoters of GMO for some foreign businesses, who are deceiving them that that's a silver bullet. In science, in agriculture, in agronomy, there are good and sustainable agronomic practices that guarantee good harvest for farmers, and they have been practiced. In fact, in some instances, there are research outcomes that have shown us that farmers were trained in good and sustainable agronomic practices, and over time, they used hybrid seeds, organic hybrid seeds, that produced higher yields than the touted genetically modified organisms. So these are the things that sustained and long-term studies will help us to see, to own it, and to take appropriate informed actions as a country, not just to rush into it because some Bill Gates comes into this country and promotes it. He's one day promoting vaccines, another day he's promoting GMs, but another day you see him online promoting population reduction. So you will begin to wonder. There's a popular TED talk that he was saying that if we do a really, really good job with vaccines, and genetically modified foods are vaccines in disguise. They are vaccines in disguise because the same technology that was used to mass produce those vaccines that we are recording in the mass media today to be causing vaccine injuries was messenger RNA, which is mRNA. That is the same technology that is mostly used in the production of those genetically modified organisms, and it's using the same attributes. So nobody can conclusively say that they are safe. We need to study them. And I think that the relevant bodies in the country, championed even by the National Assembly, to pass the legislation and enforce it, to stop the rollout and mass commercialization of genetically modified organisms. If we can remove insecurity from our farms, if we can incentivize the middle class to reintroduce the middle class, because like today I'm talking to you, if you go to Benue and convince farmers that you will buy everything that they produce so that they will not incur losses, and tell you by next season you will see much harvest. So there are a lot of interventions that research and agriculture has proven to be effective, not just GMO. GMO has too many baggages that it's too risky to jump into it. There are tons, hundreds and thousands of research papers in science that we have custody of that have proven that these things are not safe for human consumption, for the environment, for animal consumption, and even for our economy and strategic national security.
Okay. Professor, honestly, I'm just, taken aback watching you really explaining the dangers associated with these GMOs as you're explaining. I am from southern part of Kaduna State, precisely I'm Kagoma.
Yeah.
In my area, people are used to farming ginger. Ginger that you see all over this country, whether in Kano or anywhere, is being produced in southern Kaduna.
Yeah.
But about 2 years ago, since the introduction of this herbicide, ginger is no longer produced. At a particular period, just last year as a matter of fact, the ginger completely went into absence, died completely, that the local farmers didn't have the seed to cultivate this season.
Yeah.
So what they are doing now, to make money to train their children in school, they are going into cassava farming. Because the seeds of this ginger is no longer there because of the introduction of the herbicide. And there's one popular food we see in Abuja, they call it cocoyam. Cocoyam that we used to have in the past, you can harvest it and keep it till next year, it will not rot. But what we're seeing today, because of the high concentration of chemicals that water has washed it to, because cocoyam is cultivated in swampy area.
Yeah.
This cocoyam, if you now harvest it, it doesn't last up to 2 days and then it will rot.
In fact, you have said it all. You see, there is another drawback of genetic.
Yes, and then continue as we talk about agriculture. Human beings, you see a child at the age of 3, 4, 5 years developing liver cirrhosis and whatever, all these things, diseases that were known to be for elderly.
Yeah.
So people are beginning to imagine, where are these things really coming from?
You see, you have said it all. Number one, there is a drawback of genetically modified organisms. It seeks to promote monoculture, monoagriculture, monocropping. So certain traditional crops that we knew. And you see, there is something in this diversity. There is something that biodiversity brings. There's a flavor. You eat a small of this, you have this, you have this, you have this. So it adds to the nutrient diversity. For example, if you are eating only granules, granule has plant protein. But there is one particular amino acid that does not exist in granite. So if you are living in an area that people are eating only granite, they will eventually develop deficiency in that particular amino acid. So when they are eating granite, they have to also add to another type of food that will supply
to complement what they lost
and supplement what they are losing in eating only granite. So now GMs are designed to promote monocropping, because they are designed to favor large-scale industrial agriculture. So you can't do this like our people are known to be doing. And before they do this, they manufacture narratives for us from outside of our country, and they sell it to us, and our scientists and our academics and our media people, some of the media people that have become so used to brown envelope reportage, they will buy the narratives, some of them genuinely out of ignorance, and start saying that, oh, we are suffering of micronutrients. But for us scientists, we ask questions, because asking questions is the beginning point of the scientific methodology. We ask, what is responsible for the micro hunger, that the deficiency, the micronutrient deficiency? Many things, one of which is the introduction of those herbicides and chemicals into agriculture. One thing that the ordinary farmer doesn't know, and the market person doesn't know, is that most of those herbicides are meta or are trace element chelators. That means, you see, like, if you know a crab, a crab has hands like this. So in chemistry, there are some group of elements, compounds, that we call them chelators. That means they attract other metals hold them into place, to form some kind of aggregated compounds. Now, what happens is that over the years, with the ubiquitous application of those herbicides, some of the micro metals, the trace elements that were there, that contribute to forming the nutrients in the foods that we eat, are grabbed by those residues of those chemicals in the soil, such that those micro trace metals are not available for the plants to uptake in the formation of the seeds that we eventually eat. That is the kind of thing that affected ginger. Now, you see, ginger was, now they will manufacture a narrative and say there's crop failure, and they begin to develop some deceitful theories to show why ginger failed. And in the interim, they are now, the farmers naturally, by natural instinct, will go for what they are pushing. They have already provided the cassava they are tinkering with, to try to replace some of those things. Some of those lands that were used for ginger now will be used for cassava. They are achieving their aim. Now, you see, you mentioned the issue of ailments, non-communicable diseases, that when we were growing up, were not known to be diseases or ailments of children or younger people. But nowadays, you have issues like liver cirrhosis. You know, the liver is the major detoxifying organ in the body. Any toxin that enters your body, any toxic thing, any harmful thing that enters your body through ingestion, it will go through your liver. The liver is the one that will detoxify it, grab it and send it out, try to send it out. When the liver is harassed beyond what it can accommodate, it becomes scarred, it becomes injured. And in that injury, it tries to heal itself, therefore it forms scars. Okay. That is what is called liver cirrhosis. Okay. And in those areas that there is scarring, the function of the liver, because there's something they call the parenchyma cells. The liver cells that perform that function are occluded. They are denied the ability to perform the function, to work. And therefore, toxic chemicals or toxins begin to build up in the body. And then eventually the stomach grows. Yes, the stomach grows as acids. So that is one thing. There are other ailments like metabolic diseases, one of which is cholesterol, hypercholesterol or lipids, or the major one that is popularly known as diabetes mellitus, type 2 diabetes. That younger people, you know, you are having juvenile diabetes. Younger people are going down with diabetes from where? Because of this intrusion of toxic chemicals that have polluted the whole environment, including the food that we are eating. So farmers don't know that as you spread those chemicals, because they are marketing GMO to you, and GMO you warrant you to spray chemicals as freely as you wish. Remember, the grass, the weeds, is developing resistance, therefore calling for more concentration of the chemicals and additional chemicals to combine together. Like you go to a chemist by the roadside, they say, Chidi, give me mixing. And the Chidi will just mix some certain tablets and give you to take. It's that poisonous? Yeah. So now those diseases are going, and there is one very bad one: memory loss. Younger people in their middle 30s, 40s, before 50 are losing memory. They don't know about themselves again. They are losing memories. They are losing memory. It's called early memory decay. And what that implies is that our intellectual compartment is declining. And then the ultimate one, life expectancy is reducing. If you take the graph since 1960 to today, in fact from 1974 and then 1994 that these chemicals became widespread up to today, you see that life expectancy is gradually going down. Honestly. And as a nation that has invested so much in us, training us, the citizens, we cannot be patriotic to come back and give back to our country. That, hey, Mr. President, hey, Mr. Minister, you could have been a staff, a director in the cartel that is promoting these things. But now you have come back to serve Nigeria. So you must owe allegiance to the constitution of this country. You must put Nigerians' lives first before the life of your former boss or the profit of your former boss. I'm saying this with all sense of responsibility because it is a patriotic duty for us to protect this country. Our citizens, the life of a single Nigerian should not be toyed with in the name of profit for a foreign organization that is coming to promote genetically modified food. Now, Professor, what have you really done with this? Now, having exposed the dangers, inherent dangers in these GMOs, what have you really done to ensure that government should know? Have you met with President or those who are closer to him, or either meeting with National Assembly to ensure that you come up with a proposal on a bill or a motion so that that particular partisan that's gradually being accepted in the country should stop? You remember quite recently, I think sometime in May, the House of Representatives Committee on Agricultural Services raised a motion, and a resolution was taken on the floor of the House, placing a moratorium on the introduction of genetically modified organisms until further research and investigations are done to conclude that they are conclusively safe. Somehow this is Nigeria. Despite that moratorium, despite that resolution of the House, the agents of government, other departments of government still are going about jumping from every state to another state promoting genetically modified foods openly. Yet the House has not dispensed of that resolution, has not vacated that resolution. It was as a result of the efforts we are making as a research center to avail information to that committee it was actually, it wasn't the Committee on Agricultural Services that raised that resolution. It was another committee, but the House passed the resolution and moved the responsibility to the Committee on Agricultural Services, headed by Honorable Bello Kauje. And that committee is working assiduously to investigate, to call for investigation, to see to it that we really know what is happening there. That is part of what we are working.
Okay.
Another one is we hope to see the president as a research. I think
that's the best way to go.
We hope to see the president, and we know the president is not being told the truth about GMOs, because we know that the president who we have holds the lives of Nigerians very dear to himself. He wouldn't want to jeopardize the lives of Nigerians carelessly. So we hope to see the president to avail him scientific proof, evidential proof that these things are unsafe and these things are actually a Trojan horse. These things are weapons of mass destruction. These things are biological weapons. We intend to see the president, and we are also interacting with other colleagues of ours in the science and education and the academic community, and we're also been interacting with you people in the media to help us communicate these things. We are not just speculating. We come with evidence. At the appropriate time, we put all the papers on the table. They will fill this room all over the world. There are research output proving that these things are not safe. So we're interfacing with the executives, with the legislators, and we have also had some certain inroads with the judiciary to explain to them, because you know judges are very important in our society.
Sure.
So if they have understanding, but because they are judges, they were trained in law, they are not scientists, they need us to explain certain things to them, and we have been doing that.
Okay.
And then we have also been talking to the farmers and the grassroots people, because there's another thing they say, it takes two to tango. If they give you poison and you refuse to eat it, you will save yourself. But if you eat it, the person that gave you poison will say that, but he gave it, you also freely ate it. So we have been educating farmers and consumers. We are also built to meet with the Federal Consumer Protection, something agency. Commission rather.
Commission.
To help them see that this thing is one thing for somebody to sell poison to you. See, there is a popular story that I like of the fall of Troy. The Greeks brought a gift to the city of Troy, and it was a wooden horse. That is the popular thing you hear about the Trojan horse.
Trojan horse.
So the Troy took it and celebrated it because it was a sign of peace. Not knowing that inside that wooden horse, there were Greek soldiers that were concealed inside. So the Troys themselves, by their hands, rolled Greek soldiers into their community. And by nightfall,
they were killed.
The Greek soldiers opened the hatch, came out of the wooden horse, opened the gate for more Greeks to come in, and that was what signified the fall of Troy. GMOs are a Trojan horse.
Okay.
By the time we sleep,
but Professor, there are just because of time factor, but there are things that will still eat that are not GMO, but we are dying as a result. Like even smoking, they will tell you is dangerous to health. But we'll still take it. But you see, like Coke, that's highly concentrated with sugar, you'll be told it's dangerous, but we'll still take those things. So if you look at some of those things we eat that are not GMOs, we're already dying as well. So what stops us to allow GMOs to go on so that at the later on we die?
No, you see, like tobacco that you cited, you know, it took several years for people of goodwill to compel the governments to place that advert that smokers are liable to die young. Even if you put that advert on GMOs, it will be good to say that people that eat GMO are liable to develop cancer.
So Professor, this fat tomato you see bigger than my head. Or some other thing looking at something very big. You wonder where are they really coming from? Can that be seen to be GMOs?
No, you cannot just conclude that because they are fat.
One tomato you see larger than my head.
No, you cannot just conclude that they are GMOs. That is why, you see, there are other agronomic or breeding practices that can yield good crops output that are not necessarily GMOs. That is why we say that government owes the Nigerians the responsibility to place a demand, stricter regulations on GMOs, that you, who is bringing GMO, must label them, must ensure that anybody that is eating it knows that he's making a choice. But right now, you don't know which one is GMO by merely looking at it. You cannot just conclude. And therefore, it's like a black box. You just walk in. Of course, many people are eating GMOs without knowing. And that is a crime. In Russia, you'll be charged for terrorism.
Thank you so very much, Professor, for speaking with us on this program this evening. I wish those who took time to really watch us must have really learned. I appreciate you greatly, honestly.
Thank you. I really wish that they should learn and they should take action, because this is a call to action.
Honestly.
Say no to GMOs and tell the government to ban GMOs.
Where are we seeing you again with this message? Are you going to call more of these media talks like that for people to...
Certainly, we are going to get more media attention. We are going to go to the farmers and grassroots. We are going to call the attention of people in government.
All right.
And we are going to also call the attention of Pan-African community.
Okay.
So that together as Africa, this is a war against Africa.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, I've been speaking with Professor Christobek Amwa, Executive Director, Center for Food Safety and Agricultural Research, CEFSA, for being part of this program this evening. I really enjoyed every bit of detail he profile here, the dangers and solutions to what today we are eating as a result of GMOs. We must be very careful whatever comes to you on your table, so that at the end of the day, you don't keep yourself unknowingly. And so with this, when it goes out here, I believe more of these kind of talks will be going on in some other media outfits, so that the country becomes conscious of what's actually going on. That's about the size of the program, Political Viewpoint on ASO Television. We shall be doing that some other time. Of course, my name is Topsy Gimba. News will be coming your way by 7. Do have a very pleasant time. And I'm out of the studio. Bye-bye.